Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today, instead of giving our hot take review on a game we just finished playing, we're going to finish out our countdown of the top 30 games of all time. 2 weeks ago, we did numbers 21 through 30. Last week, we did numbers 11 through 20. And today, you're going to get the cream of the crop, numbers 1 through 10, our favorite games of all time. So before we jump into that list, we're going to discuss a quick poll that we asked on Twitter. If you don't already follow the show, every week we ask a poll on Twitter and get a little bit of listener feedback, get some responses, and we read some of those on the show. So this week I asked, what's your favorite way to learn new board games? The options I gave were to read the rule book. Number 2 was taught by a friend. Number 3 was a how to play video. And number 4 was a playthrough video. As always, we got a lot of fun comments on this. I'll mention a couple of them as we discuss this, but if you want to follow us on Twitter so you can be involved in these listener responses, you can follow us at BG_hot takes. We love chatting with you all here, and it gives you a chance to go out and see a lot of the other responses that we don't have a chance to read on the show. So let's jump right into this conversation. So how did you guys answer this? What's your favorite way to learn a board game?
This was an easy answer for me. I mean, hands down, it is instructional videos. I almost always find manuals difficult to understand for some reason, and obviously the ones that aren't written as well are even harder to understand. I don't really like watching playthroughs, not because it's not helpful, but because they just take too damn long. Like, I can't sit through 2 hours worth of a video to understand a game. I don't even like it when the instructional videos go that long. So, and I'll say as a close second, maybe having a friend teach, someone who's pretty good at, teaching games. Some people are atrocious at this, so this is not even a clear winner. Thankfully, Tim, you're the one who teaches us more games than most, and you're pretty good at it. So yeah, that's a decent way to go about learning a game. But an instructional video, especially one that's well done, is always great. I have a couple of favorites. Knights Around the Table, Watch It Played. I mean, some of the big ones. And, there's some that do it better than others, but I almost always find that that's the most effective way for me to learn.
So yeah, for this one, the way I enjoy learning games, I don't know if this is I learn the best this way, is when a friend teaches me. They can explain the rules, and I got them right there. Wait a minute, what does this mean? What are you talking about here? So what if I do this? Maybe that's annoying for the rules teacher when I'm asking all these questions and stuff, but I think that helps, that immediate feedback. How do I go through the game? What's the flow of the game? All that's right there. And Tim, you do a great job of that. I noticed when Chris was talking, he didn't say Adam did a good job of teaching games. Whoops, I better go work on my stuff. But no, Tim takes the time. He's got a definite kind of format that he uses. When I try to explain a game, I'm like, dude, how do you guys not already understand this? You just put a card and do the thing. It's right there. I'm probably one of the thing that makes Chris not enjoy a friend teaching him. But yeah, instructional videos is probably my second. Always going to remember Rodney Smith teaching, or was it John Gets Games? I can't remember. I think maybe John Gets Games teaching Brass Birmingham, talking about iron all the time. And I think that means iron. I'm still not sure. But the videos are a great second option for me. And yeah, Knights Around the Table, good call out there, Chris. That guy's always entertaining. His videos are fantastic. And the editing is good. Little cartoons popping up and stuff. Nice job. So that's how I enjoy learning board games.
For me, it kind of depends a lot of the time on the weight of the board game. It's funny that you guys mentioned that I'm a good teacher, because the funny thing is, like, I always feel like I have to rush through a teach, because some of the people that I teach board games to hate sitting through teaches, and so I find myself always constantly rushing through. Don't worry, guys, it's almost done. And so I'm always afraid that my tempo is either too fast and I'm skipping over stuff, or I'm taking too long.
Now, Jen is probably listening, yelling right now, or I don't know if Jen listens or not, but if she is listening, she's yelling and she says, there's a whole vein of Azul players out there that play this game wrong. There's no way you're a good rule teacher, Tim. What do you have to say to that?
Yeah, I definitely am not. I'm not perfect. Everyone should probably double check my rules teach after the first game and see if I missed anything.
There's a difference between being engaging and accurate.
Yeah, that's right. The way I usually learn a game is I take it out of the box, I set up on the table and use the rule book to show me how to set up. And then I like to watch a video. And if it's a fairly light to midweight game, I like a how to play video. Something like Rodney Smith teaching it is great. If it's a heavier game, that's a little bit harder for me to process what's happening by just a how to play video. So I like to use a playthrough video. So that's when, like, John Gets Games or Before You Play are my two favorites of those formats, because then I can just kind of watch them take some turns. Even Rado, if he's the only one that's got a how to play or a kind of a playthrough video, I'll watch his. So, it depends a little bit on the weight. Chris, you're absolutely right. A lot of people are terrible at teaching games, so I definitely didn't put that on my list. most of the time I prefer to learn it on my own and, kind of understand how the rules go before I sit down and play a game. The way that people answered on this poll, 30% said they prefer to read the rule book, which surprised me a little bit. I thought more people would prefer to be taught a game. Only 19% said taught by a friend, probably because most of them have had bad experiences in that situation. 40% said a how to play video, and then 11% said playthrough videos. Chris, you're right. The playthrough videos can take a long time. It can be an hour and a half. But the best playthrough videos tend to show you the most important rules in the first few rounds. So you can watch for 20 minutes and get a really good sense for the flow. You might not catch every edge rule. And then usually after I watch one of those things, then I'll go back and read the rule book and kind of walk through two-handed play following some of those steps.
I think this goes to highlight that learning games isn't necessarily the easiest thing out there. It's not an easy chore. I mean, there's instructional videos, there's rule book. It's not easy to do. So it's nice having all these resources, but even after, I don't know, you play a game 3, 4, 5 times, 30 times for me in Terraforming Mars, you'll find a new rule in there. Oh my gosh, I was playing this game wrong the whole time. Tim, thanks for putting yourself out there for learning and teaching so many of these games, because it's a difficult thing to do.
Just to put an exclamation point behind what Adam just said, whenever I want to teach a new game to my wife, who likes playing games but doesn't like learning games, I'll say, hey, I got this new game. It's really pretty cool. I think you're going to like it. The first question I'll get is, does Rodney have a video on that? If the answer is yes, I can usually get her to do it. If the answer is no, it's a little tougher.
No, those are great points, you guys. And I think that's one of the barriers with the hobby, right? I mean, I guess every hobby, to get really into it, you know, there's some homework that has to be done. There's a little bit of time that has to be invested to get into the hobby. If somebody's going to pick something up off the shelf, they can't just sit down and play it. It can be hours of figuring out how to play it, being ready to teach somebody else before you actually are playing the game. That's a challenge. I don't know that there's a good solution. Obviously, lighter games make that easier. Some games are starting to introduce some learn as you play features, but we've talked about that in the past, and I don't think it's usually very successful, and probably can only be done with lighter games anyway. But it's a challenge. It's not something that bothers me too much. Like, I enjoy that part of the hobby, is getting in and figuring it out, but I definitely can see it's going to block a lot of people from getting into this if they know they have to do homework before they can actually start enjoying the activity.
All right.
Just a few comments I'll read on here. Seth Gonzalez said, learning from a friend is the best way and my favorite way to learn a game. You can't ask a rulebook or video a question. It's best for me to have someone show me the ways of the game like the ways of the Force. Yoda didn't throw no stinking rulebook at Luke. Come on. And he actually memed up a little picture of Yoda talking to Luke, and Yoda's got Wonderland's war in his hands. And he put on here, read the rulebook, you must. So Derek Bruff said, I'm a little surprised at all the votes for the rulebook, what with all the how to play videos out there. Rulebook is my first choice if the rulebook is halfway decent. My friends will often ask me to read the rulebook and then teach them the game. And Ben Michael said, playthrough videos for me all the way. There's a lot you can get out of watching a play, context for why rules are the way they are, and how the game flows that you often can't get from a rule video or reading the rulebook. That's just out of the 3 first comments that I read there. All 3 of them were different favorite ways to learn. So clearly, different people prefer different ways to learn, and it's good that there's a number of options for us. Like, I'm glad that there's a lot of content creators putting out these videos. Many times they're doing it for free. It's not their full-time job. But even the ones that are getting paid for it, I really appreciate. I think all of us appreciate that that's a tool that we've got in our tool belt. Quickly, before we jump into this, I wanted to call out 3 listeners that regularly interact with us on Twitter. That is Seth Gonzalez, Never Say Die, which is Chris. I forget Mike's, but also Mike, who I forget what his Twitter handle is. But these 3 listeners got together with me in Chicago this week. I'm traveling for work, and I met up with them. We played Wonderland's War together. Awesome to get to know some people that are in our community that interact with us all the time on social media, and I got to meet them in person. So again, just wanted to shout them out. Had a great time playing games with them. It's super fun.
Very cool.
And just to be clear, that's not this Chris. That's Chicago Chris. Totally
different Chris. Yeah, different Chris. Let's jump into the main event. Let's jump into what everybody's here for, and that is our top 10 games of all time. These are the best games that have been printed that you can play, even if we don't agree on them, but they're at least worth, I think, checking out, paying a little attention to. So let's get started, Chris.
So I'll start by saying that I don't think there's anything on my top 10 that's going to shock you guys. There may be some surprises in where they fall on the list, but I don't think there's anything in there that you're going to go, wow, didn't see that coming. So my number 10 is Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar, by Simone Luciani and Daniele Tascini, published by Czech Games Edition. And oh man, there's so much to say about this game, a lot of which I've already said on previous episodes. We reviewed this game, we talked about it quite a bit, so this is not a game that should be new to anybody who listens to our show. But just to summarize, man, what a beautiful game this is. It has this great production with these big moving gears that ends up being gorgeous and really meaty, but not gaudy. It's not like giant minis, but it's a really functional way of having a really impressive production. Every turn, you're either putting a worker down or you're pulling a worker off these gears, and then they rotate so that the action that you take on a given turn when you pull a worker off is wherever that worker happens to be sitting. So you really have to spend a lot of time planning ahead and sequencing where your characters, your workers are on these gears, because what you want to have is this big turn where you've got all your guys placed, and then you pull them all off at just the right time, and they're all in the right place at the right time. Almost like, it feels to me almost like computer programming, understanding the right things happening in the right time so that everything goes smoothly. So super fun game. I absolutely recommend it. I love playing it. I always want to go back to it. It definitely deserves to be in my top 10, hands down.
Yeah, I love Tzolk'in. Obviously, I mentioned it last week as my number 11, so it was right at the edge here. Could have made my top 10 easily. One of the funny things about this game is Chris says, go back and listen to our review on it. But I remember Chris wasn't so hot on it on the first play. Like, he was very much like, I could see potential here, but I'm not sure that I like this game or not. And now it's in his top 10. So it just goes to show that once in a while, a hot take isn't always the final take, even though we usually get it right. Cool to see this on your list, Chris.
Yeah, Chris, it'd be interesting to go back and look at your top 10 list from 2 years ago. I suspect not very many resource management games would be in there. But here we go. You're number 10 already, Tzolk'in the Mayan Calendar. What an enticing Turing machine of a worker placement game. You nailed it, Chris. This one's fantastic.
Just to stick with that theme of Chris picking something that wouldn't have been on his list 2 years ago, my number 10 is an area control game with a lot of conflict in it, and that is Wonderland's War. Wonderland's War was designed by Tim Eisner, Ben Eisner, Ian Moss, and published by Druid City Games and Skybound Games. We've talked about this game a lot recently, right? We had a review that we all raved about the game. We've mentioned it on a couple other episodes since then. I just want to play it all the time, having a fun time with it. Now, the reason it's number 10 and not higher on my list, because this is the only game that I kind of adjusted in my list from what the Pub Meeple rankings came, and that's because I've had a couple more times to play it since I first ranked it. And when I did the Pub Meeple rankings, it showed up around number 5. But I had to push it to number 10, and the reason is because I played it 2 more times, but had to teach it both those times. We raised a couple concerns when we first reviewed this game. One was the amount of setup time. One was the kind of the workflow that you have to follow every time you play it. Now I've played the game 4 times, and those things are still issues. The setup is a lot. It takes a long time to get this set up. The teach is a lot. I thought it was going to be easier to teach, but for people who didn't know the game at all, there's a lot of iconography you have to teach. The flow of the combat, what I've had to do to teach it is actually walk somebody through a round of combat and then have to walk them through how forging works and stuff like that. So it's a fairly heavy teach from my experience. And then actually going through that, especially the post-combat flow of all the steps that happen, I continue to have to refer back to a little flow chart, walk through every step of it. People are missing steps if they try to jump ahead too much. And so those concerns we raised on our first review are sticking there. And that's made it less approachable than I was hoping it would be. It hasn't made it less fun for me. I want to be playing it, but I'm hoping that I start to get to replay it with people that know it well. Like that second time I played with Chris and Steve was great. We just jumped right into it, started playing it. That was probably my most fun experience with it. But having to teach it to a new player, this is definitely less approachable than I expected. All that to be said, it's still on my top 10, so still an amazing game, a game I'm having a lot of fun with. I could see this rising if I kind of get into a little bit of a repeat play with some people and I'm not dealing with those issues as much, or I could see it sinking if I keep trying to teach it and people are just kind of fumbling through that first play of it like I've seen with the other couple plays that I've had. So super fun game, love the production. You got to check out this game. It's a blast. I love the bag building combat in it.
Well, I suspect we'll hear more about this one on 1 or 2 more lists. And yeah, you've thoroughly tampered my expectations, Tim. I just got this one in the mail. So excited. And now I'm not even excited anymore. I'm just probably going to give it away.
I agree with Adam.
All right. Well, my number 10 game of all time is relatively new to me, but I've played it 5 or 6 times now. This is Radlands from Roxley Games. This one, I first saw it on Board Game Chatterbox. She had pictures of this on her Twitter. I was like, what is that game? It looks beautiful. So investigated some more. Oh, kind of little tableau builder. You got some chunky water tokens you get to use. You got this amazing, almost synthwave art that I'm super high on. A lot of pinks, a lot of blues. It looks kind of like Mad Max Fury Road was in the future, but then taken back to the 80s. Has this amazing artwork looking like that. So what you're doing, you're battling tableaus. Resources are scarce. 3 waters per turn per player. You're managing how you want to spin those waters and where you want to put your people out to make a nice little tactical shifting tableau to try to conquer the 3 camps of your opponent, and they're doing the same thing to you. That's Radlands by Roxley Games.
Hey, Adam, that's just a 2-player game, right?
That's correct. Only 2 players.
Because that's one that I so want to try, and I'm hoping that one of these days soon we're able to get together and I can try that game with you, because it looks like so much fun. And I'm a second what you said about the art. I absolutely love it. I love the Mad Max reference, for sure. It looks like it'd be super fun. The problem with a 2-player game is you don't want to have too many players required. Like a 3-player only, an up-only game is kind of a problem for me, because you can't always get 3 players to play a game together. Having only a 2-player game is problematic because, a lot of times you do have more than 2 people and you want to have the option at least. So I think that's one that would kind of tamp this one down a little bit for me, but the game itself looks so much fun.
Yeah, I really want to try this now. When I first heard about how the game played, I was afraid it was going to be a little bit too much of just a push and pull. And the more I hear about it, it reminds me more of like a Magic the Gathering duel with a lot of variety in the cards. And so I'm excited to try this. This is one I definitely like to give a shot to.
All right. Well, my number 9 game, I actually don't have a lot to say about because Tim just said it all. It's Wonderland's War, and I second everything that he said. I mean, this is a great game, and it's also one that I had to do some manipulation on as well. And the reason for that was it was actually higher on my list. But when I really compared it to the other games on my top 10, I looked at it and said, I want to play this more right now because it's new to me, more than some of these other games that have been on my list for a long time and are kind of like tried and true. But in the end, I'm not sure I can say Wonderland's War is better than Game X, which you'll hear what all the Game X's are later on. But there's a lot of them. Like I couldn't possibly say Wonderland's War is better. But that said, this game rocks. The setup kind of sucks. That's kind of frustrating. The one time that we've actually set up the physical version, which is when Tim and Steve and I played, it was an absolute beast. If you buy the Super Deluxe Edition, which I don't think you actually can anymore, but if you can, it comes with a tray that all the tokens go into, and that's great. But it's a little bit of a beatdown having to set this whole thing up, especially if you had little baggies full of chits. So there's that. Beyond that, I just want to play this game. I don't know if I'm going to feel the same way after multiple plays. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll be like Tim and feel just as excited about the gameplay itself. But I want to try. I want to find out. And so while I may at the moment want to play this game more, I feel like I had to put a ceiling on this one. So that's why it's at number 9 on my list.
That was a great call out for the deluxe edition, which the tray helps immensely. I did get a chance to play my deluxe edition one time with the deluxe chips, and it was awesome. You just pop that thing out of the box and you don't have to deal with it. But then on Monday, I played with a couple listeners, and one of them brought their retail copy, and they had all the chips in separate baggies. And oh my gosh, what a pain in the butt to pour everything out on the table. But even with the chips being kind of prearranged in that box, it's still such a huge game to set up. Like it's a massive board, which I love, right? It's a beautiful board, lots of room to play there, but you got to set up, this huge board. You got to set up the Wonderland cards. You got to set up the chips. You got to set up the players and, the player boards and everything like that. So listen, again, great fun game. Lots to set up there. I think it's still worth it. I still think it's a wonderful game. And the fact that it's on at least 2 of our top 10 lists, you got to check it out.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. My number 9 is also Wonderland's War. I'm going to just jump in and say, hey, everything you guys are saying, I totally agree with. Beautiful. So my number 9, Wonderland's War.
That's pretty impressive that this game made all 3 of our top 10s. I mean, that's really kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, and it wasn't, Adam, I think you only had the one play so far, right? But me and Chris now both had multiple plays, and still we want to keep going back to it. So that's pretty incredible. Right now, this game just hit under the top 800. I think it's like 798 on the Board Game Geek top games of all time list. I predict this will make a top 100 if they can get it out into more people's hands, because the first printing is pretty much out. I know that they're planning to do another Kickstarter or some other way to get some of the deluxe editions and stuff like that out. So I think as this gets into more hands, it's going to continue to rise up the list. It's a very cool game. All right, well, my number 9, kind of skipping around a little bit here, but is La Granja. La Granja was designed by Michael Keller and Andreas Odenhall, and the publisher was originally Spielworks. Chris mentioned this already last week, and I just love this game. I love the free bonus of playing out a new card into your tableau at the beginning of the round. I love the dice drafting. I love the area control and the stalls. And I love the thematics of that as well, where it's this little like aggressive, hey, I'm going to set up a stall that's bigger next to yours and yours is going to go out of business. Like what a fun little theme to add into what is otherwise a dry farming concept. But I think one of the things that really makes this game hit for me is just the fact that there's so many free things you get to do in the game. Obviously, there's resource management can be very tight, a little bit heavy, but the fact that you get that free upgrade, you get the free income, you get the dice drafting options for free. Games that just give you stuff make me pretty happy. I don't have to pay for every little thing I do. I can manage my resources and get other things, but I like that it just gives me some of those bonuses. It's always fun little rewards throughout this game. I love playing this game. I can't wait to get the deluxe edition that's coming in when the Kickstarter ships, probably sometime next year. But this is a blast. I've probably played this game like a dozen times since we reviewed it, and I still love playing it.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned it. I think my favorite part of this game is that little stall area control thing, and like how he said, kind of not so passive aggressive, my stall's bigger, get out of here, and little persnickety arguments about where to have your market. That's pretty fun to me, and I like that little integration of theme there. If you're looking for my number 9, this is where it would have been. It was Wonderland's War. Skip, pass. Chris, on to you.
Okay, well, my number 8 is another favorite of Adam's. It's Outlive. Outlive was designed by Gregory Oliver and published by La Boy de Jeu Games. This is one of my first games I played, and it's still one of my favorites. One of the things that Adam complained about in Outlive, which I can understand, is the tightness of the economy. And as a result, you also have a lot of people dying, because if you don't get the right resources, your workers or your inhabitants of your shelter end up dying. In that sense, it's sort of like feeding your workers in Tzolk'in. And that's a mechanism that, even though these two games have it, and I love both these games, it's not always a mechanism I like. And one of the complaints that I have frequently in games is the tightness of the economy. In this game, man, is that economy tight. But I still love it, and I'm not sure exactly why. It may be because the resources that you get in this game as you move around this rondel and you're able to pull resources out of the individual spots that you land on, that there's not necessarily a shortage of resources in a given spot unless someone else gets in there and snatches it out from underneath you, but you have to really focus on which resources you want. You can almost always get something and get plenty of it, but you want to make sure you're getting the right stuff. So I'm not sure if maybe that mitigates for me the tightness of the economy, but I still like it. I like the fact that it's heavily thematic. This is a game that from the box art to the characters to the production to the little pieces, and I thanks to Tim handing it off to me back in the early days. I think he now regrets giving me his copy of the deluxe version. It's so beautiful. It's probably not quite as nice in the standard retail version, but the production of this thing is amazing. And again, it feels like you're in the middle of a story. I always love that in a game. And this one kind of puts together heavily thematic, resource management, and some really tight economy, but done in a way that I find palatable. I love this game. And so that's why it's at number 8 on my list.
This is a game I do regret handing off, but to be honest, I think it's one game where I think I'd be okay, and I might even pick up the retail edition at some point. The main things that are different between the retail and Kickstarter version are that the resources are, I think they're cardboard chits instead of little plastic components. And then the people that you can rescue, your survivors, those are little cardboard chits instead of plastic standees. But the thing that I like the least about the Kickstarter version is the actual workers that you're moving around the board. It's sets of 3, 4, or 5 characters. And it's really hard to differentiate those different groupings. Well, in the retail version, there are little meeples that just have the numbers 3, 4, or 5 clearly written on them. And I actually think it'll be more playable. So because the box size is so huge in the Kickstarter version, and the original, or kind of the retail version, is just like a more normal box size, and it makes it a little bit more usable, I actually think I might be happier with the retail edition. So I'll probably pick it up at some point if I see it on sale or something. Great game. I love playing it. I'm so glad to see this high on your list, though, Chris.
Chris, when you said Outlive, I think I physically twitched at the pain in my stomach. I just remember the screams of my post-apocalyptic clan screaming for water as I let them starve, and they died, and it was just a horrible experience. So, okay, now I have a question for you guys about this game. Is it possible, if there's a 4-player game, can the other 3 players box the 4th player out of all the water and it breaks this game? Or the other possibility is that I'm just very bad at this game. Which one? I leave it to you.
Adam, we did not go after you and try to box you out. You just played poorly. I don't think that there would be. I think three players probably could gang up on somebody here and make it harder for them to play. But I don't see where anyone would do that unless you're just a jerk off.
Like nobody was picking on you, Tim. I mean Adam.
My number 8 game, my favorite game of all time, my number 8 favorite game of all time is Clank, a deck building adventure. This is designed by Paul Denon and was published by Renegade Game Studios and Direwolf Studios. So Clank is a series at this point, right? Like the original Clank game now has a number of expansions that all come with new boards and new cards and different mechanisms. There's Clank in Space. There's the Legacy Clank version, and I love them all. But my favorite, I think, is Clank, just the original. It's a little more streamlined than Clank in Space. It's something you can just play repeatedly, and there's a ton of content to build it out. I just love this game. I have fun with it every single time I play it. I think Paul Denon has just killed the genre of mixing deck building with a board on the table. And I may be talking about another one of his games coming up here. But I love Clank. I think it's fantastic. I will play it anytime.
Yeah, Clank, you know what? I've been trying to like this game, you guys, and I don't know if I can. You got to get shoes to do anything. I didn't get any shoes. I think I've just played it the once. So this one hasn't risen to any kind of level that it has for you guys.
Man, Adam's just like negative Nelly today. Man, I can't wait to make fun of your games later on.
Well, here's your chance. My number 8 game is Innis. This game is fantastic. Let me pull up the numbers here. Everyone's shaking their head over there. This one's designed by Christian Martinez with artists by Jim Fitzpatrick. Amazing art by Jim Fitzpatrick and published by Matago Games. This is an area control game, high negotiation. You got to be ready to talk it out with your friends if you're going into combat. But preceding combat, you have this clever card play, this clever draft up front, a short amount of cards. So by the 3rd or 4th round, everybody knows and is familiar with every card. So you're going to be playing against, what does this person have? What does that person? This very quick card playing aspect. And the combat ties into that, where you have to discard a card or lose a player or negotiate to end the battle. That's all you're doing in a combat here. There's no dice. There's no shifting cubes around. Card, a person in your battle, or some special card, and that's it. Simple combat here, fun area control, unique win conditions with a backdrop of this beautiful art, beautiful setting. Can't get enough of Innis, and I never will because nobody wants to play it with me.
Yeah, I'll cop to that one. I don't love this game. I've tried it with you, and I just can't get enthusiastic about it. And the funny thing is, it seems like I should. It's got things that I like now. Negotiation, I hate that part. I hate that in so many games. Any game that's got negotiation, I pretty much want to push to the wayside. But it seems like the other pieces of this, I should really enjoy, and I just can't get enthusiastic about it. I just think about Innis, and I go, meh.
Yeah, I really like Innis. I like the card drafting. I like what Adam said, that you are playing with the same cards every round, so you know what to expect. So it's very much playing mind games with your opponents, and there's a lot to like about it. The production's cool and things like that, but I think the problem with it for me is the negotiation part. And basically this is a king making game, and the couple times I played this more than 2-player, there was a king making situation where somebody at the end decided, well, I can't win, so one of you two is going to win. I'm going to choose who it is. And I just hate that. It probably isn't going to play out that way every time, but it did the couple times I played it more than 2 players. I actually enjoyed it a lot at two players, even though 2 players not traditionally the way you want to play area control, and it probably would get a little stale, but I actually think I found it more fun that way. It's a cool game, though. I play it anytime. I really don't mind it. I've heard the Seasons of Innis expansion can potentially solve some of those issues, at least the length of the game. I'm not exactly sure how, but I'd love to try it with the Season of Innis expansion too. So cool to see this still hitting for you, Adam. We should play it again sometime. Make Chris suffer through it.
No, I'll give anything a try twice, 3 times, whatever.
Yeah, I've heard the king making issues and some of the complaints, and I get that they're there. You can just use that expansion rule if you want to shorten up the game. It's just a tiebreaker kind of thing, or this is now when the game ends kind of situation. So, heard the complaints. Still would love to play it more.
So this must be the Paul Denon round because my number 7 game is Dune Imperium, which is designed by Paul Denon and published by Direwolf Games. And I'm guessing this is not the last time we're going to hear about Dune Imperium on today's show. I think. We'll see. Such a fun game. The funny thing about this game is it's a game I suck at so bad. I've never even come close to winning this game. I don't think I've ever even come close to getting half of the points of the winner. I might not have even gotten half of the points of the person who came in second to last. It's just I cannot crack the code on this game. I don't know why. In fact, I think when we did our last discussion on this game, one of you said, "Wow, I thought you really hated it because you sit there the whole time going, I hate this game." And I do say that. It's not really fair because I don't actually hate the game. I think the game is brilliant. I think it's this interesting combination of really nice art from the movie. If you're familiar with the movie and enjoy it, that's a definite plus for this game. But this very simple but elegant production. Normally, I like to go big. I think Dune Imperium does a good job getting the production right with some very spare, basic components. And I think that's actually a really nice thing. I love having the worker placement tied to the cards and that bit of deck building that you do throughout this game. I love games that do that combine a board with deck building. So for example, Clank in Space or the Clank series, I mean, that's a great example. Dune Imperium is another great example of that. That you have these cards that give you the opportunity to move to certain spaces and take certain actions, or you can hold on to them and get the end of round benefit from them. So you get some interesting choices to make. All the different spaces around the board are interesting choices to make, and so much of it is heavily thematic, based on the story, and the cards and the capabilities that they have kind of really put you in that story. So Dune Imperium is a game that I can't play this game, but I sure love trying, and that's why it's at my number 7.
Chris, would you pick with the Rise of X expansion or without it?
I think I'd pick with. I don't have a great reason for saying that other than just I enjoy it more, and I think I played it less, so it still feels kind of new to me. So yeah, I'd say with.
All right, so my number 7 favorite board game of all time is Gaia Project. It's a game that you guys both mentioned on last week's list. Still really love this game. Luckily, due to Board Game Arena, I've had a chance to play it dozens of times this year, more than I ever expected to. I've had a physical copy of this game for several years, had only played it a few times in person, loved every play of it. It's got a great solo mode. If you're a solo player, this is a great heavy puzzle that's really easy to operate, but very strategic. But yeah, it's great. And I think it was a little higher on my list last year. I think it was like number 3 or 4. Probably the only reason it's fallen just a tad is because I have gotten to play it a whole lot, which means it's just not quite as exciting for me anymore. But I still love it. I think this game is going to stick around for a long time. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Getting the opportunity to play it has also been great to really dive into the deeper strategies of it and understand all the moving pieces in a lot of, a lot more intricate ways than I used to. What a cool game. Especially for a game that has virtually no randomness in the game at all. Everything is like the puzzles on the table and visible to you from the start of the game. And generally, I don't love that, but in this game, it really works. The players create some extra challenges and things you have to work around during the course of the game. And I love working with all the asymmetric powers in here. Love Gaia Project.
Tim, it's been a blast playing with you and some of the people, and Chris, some of our listeners too, playing this one on Board Game Arena. It's been fun. At first, Tim had this game and he was showing us all the moves, and I was like, what? How is he doing this? And I felt like for a while there, I had the edge. I was finding some strategies and advancing. And now lately, the last few plays, Tim has really found some new strategy. So I feel like different things are blossoming at different times for different players, which is just a neat aspect of a game. What a cool game as Gaia Project.
Yeah, this is definitely a game that's higher on my list this year than it was last year, because I think this time last year I was saying how much I freaking hate Gaia Project. And in reality, I think a lot of the change there has to do with it being on BGA and giving me easy access to the game. Because otherwise, I don't think I ever would have sat down at a game night with you guys and said, oh man, let's get Gaia Project out. But now that I get it a little bit more, unfortunately, it's one of those games like Dune Imperium that I just can't seem to wrap my head around. But it's fun to try. I like playing all the different factions. I really like the asymmetry is enough that it feels like you're playing a slightly different game every time based on the faction that you're doing. But it's not such an asymmetry that I can't possibly play the game without understanding all of the ins and outs of your faction. So I think that's a really neat piece of this as well, which is why it made my list. It didn't make my top 10, but it still did make my list.
My number 7 game of all time, and this is a highly speculative pick. I've played it twice and in a totally different version than what it is right now. This is Arks. This isn't even out yet. It's coming out in 2023. This is designed by Cole Worley and art by Kyle Farron, being published by Leader Games. This is Cole Worley's take on a 4X on this beautiful board, but also trick-taking elements. Is it really trick-taking? Is it some kind of hand management trick-taking blend? I don't know, but it's fun to me. You're playing this card, you get to do it right away. The next player can either follow or some variant of what the lead played, and they get to do the action too, and you resolve it right away. There's not really any blocking, a little bit of planning ahead for that next turn. You're going to use your high card, you're going to use your low card. Fun decisions, fun in-game conditions. I like how the points are earned here. Arks is a fun game for me. Highly speculative. We'll see if the final version is anything close to what I played, but that's where it's sitting now.
I feel like I need to play this one again because we played it one time and I did not love this game. But I can also see why maybe I would like that game if I played it a second time. You know, every once in a while you have the game where you're like, was it really the game itself, or was it just, was I not in the mood to play a game that night, or was that not the game that I was in the mood to play? I feel like to give this one a fair shake, I'd have to try it again because my impression from our first play wasn't great, but I can definitely see. I mean, the fact that you enjoy it as much as you did, and I generally, trust your judgment on games, it's probably worth another shot.
Yeah, Adam, I'm glad to see this hit for you so well as well. Obviously, it was in my top 30 list, probably a little lower because I didn't feel like we got it. We played the final production, but it was so much fun. There's the rare game where you play a game one night and then you just can't get it out of your mind. And Arks was the most recent of that for me. And I don't know why, because it's not a super complex game. It didn't feel like it was that hard to grasp the strategy on. But for some reason, I dreamt about this game the night after we played it the first time. I woke up several times trying to rethink the strategy that I used or the way some turns went, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And loved my second play of it as well. I've discovered that there was some real strategy to dig into there and to get better at. And I can't wait to see what the final version ends up like, and I can't wait to see how that campaign mode works. It sounds like a great way to implement a campaign where it's just 3 games with an evolving story and evolving elements to it. So it'll be really neat to see how that works, something that you don't have to sit down for 12 sessions with to get a kind of more epic feeling out of it. So love to see this on your list. We'll see where this sticks around, next year if we have it by then, or 2 years from now. Cool game, very cool game.
All right, well, my number 6 game is another relatively new one. It's Ark Nova, which was designed by Matthias Wig and published by Furlan Spiel. And this is one that I was not on the episode when you guys played this game. I was out that week for some reason, I'm not sure. But I had this really interesting, reaction to it. I'm like, everybody kind of feels mediocre about this game except for Tim, and he's really enthusiastic about it. And Tim is not usually the one I look to for the games I'm going to enjoy the most. And so I was a little bit skeptical. But then he and I tried it because he enjoyed it so much. He said, hey, let's just get together on like a Saturday morning and we'll play a game. And we did. And oh man, I loved this game. It reminds me of Terraforming Mars in a zoo. So much of what you're doing there, you're trying to do the combo cards and building things. And there's a little bit of a polyomino area filling exercise in your player board trying to build out your zoo. And there's so much about that I really love. Now, I bought a copy of it, and I've now played it maybe 4 or 5 times. I played it that once with Tim, and I played it a few times with my wife, who absolutely stomped me the first time that we played. And then when I commented on it, she said, what, you think you're going to win a zoo game against a veterinarian? Because she happens to be a veterinarian. But we had a great time playing it, and I'm looking forward to getting this game out on the table again. It's one that I could see the potential for it to feel a little bit the same in a way that I don't feel about Terraforming Mars. I'm not sure if it's going to get there. I mean, there's a stack of cards that's about a foot tall, so maybe the variety in the cards will keep it alive for me. But I do see that as a potential issue down the road. But I haven't gotten there yet. So I'm still really enjoying this game, loving it, and I'm looking forward to getting it back on the table again. and that is Ark Nova, and that was my number 6 game.
Well, I'll just jump in and say that my number 6 is Ark Nova also. So right on the same page with you there, Chris. This game has been hot for the entire board game community this year. It's already number 7 on the overall Board Game Geek top 100 list. Rose higher and faster, I think, than anything I've seen, at least in the time that I've been gaming. And obviously, it's sitting pretty close to where we're sitting right here. Everything you said is the same for me. I like some of the unique mechanisms that it ties together here between the scoring track, the overlapping scoring tracks, the action selection mechanism is very cool. Now, Chris, you mentioned about the risk of it starting to feel samey, and I don't disagree with you. I think this might be a little higher for me, but I've played it about 10 times now, and the flow of the game does start to feel samey. I'm starting to find that there is kind of like almost always a right action. You can kind of plan out your next few actions before the break happens, and it gets to be a pretty much like a rote process. But I have so much fun still digging for the right cards and trying to put them together that I'm okay with that. I could see it dropping for me a little bit, but I also could see it rising a little bit, depending on how much more I can get it played and how that continues to feel. I think this is one of those games where maybe there's not so much to explore anymore after 10 games, but there's still a lot to enjoy in the process of playing it. So I still love this game, my number 6.
This game, yeah, I think it could someday get there for me. There's a couple things, though, that irk me just a bit. That crossover scoring mechanism, I don't know why I don't like that so much. I feel like it gives the leader a chance to get the super big crossover, and the next few players are just kind of, nothing I can do. And maybe you have that last-ditch effort to get there. Also, the deck milling, you talked about this giant deck of cards, Chris. And the management of that deck milling. I felt like in Terraforming Mars, I can manage my deck milling a little bit more. I know what's in the deck. I know, I have this card. There's 3 or 4 cards that'll work for it. I know I can get some science tags that'll give me more access to that deck. So just my familiarity with other games and a couple of tiny things that just irk me a bit keep this one from elevating so much for me. But I see the appeal. My number 6 game is Smartphone Inc. This is the one I brought to TimCon and introduced you guys to. I was a little bit worried that the theme might not hit. It looks so dull and dry and boring. You got this man in a beard with a clipboard. That does not look that cool. But you open the box, get past that cover, open the box, take a look at this board. It's sprawling, it's beautiful, it's huge. It's a map of the world. You got all these networks that route to these big cities across different continents, and they all want different types of cell phones. It's your job to decide how you're going to do that. Are you going to set your price low? Are you going to set up offices in these different countries? Are you going to gain these techs that are more valuable and give you bigger parts to your corporation engine to produce more of these goods and put them out there? You have this sequence of play, this quick flow. I love this game. I'm getting all excited talking about it. That's Smartphone Inc.
What a great choice. This one I don't think made it to my top 30, did it? I'm looking back through it now through my other top 30 games, and no, it wasn't in there. But honestly, I wouldn't have been shocked if this game popped in there, and probably the only reason it didn't, because I loved the one play that we had of it. It's the fact that we only played it once, and it's not something that's so exciting and so engaging that it just stayed in my mind. But it's a super fun game. I loved playing it. I'd love to play it again. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, I want to go play me some Smartphone Inc. So good choice, Adam.
Thank you.
For sure. When you just mentioned this, I was thinking too, why didn't this show in my top 30? Because I think it could have. And the reason is probably because I probably have it rated like an 8 on Board Game Geek, and I only pulled in games that were rated 9 or higher. But the thing is that this is a game that I think could raise for me. It could be a 9, maybe with another player or two if it still remained fun. But I've definitely had a great time playing this every time I played it. So this is an awesome pick. I'm glad to see it get some love and remain in your attention.
All right. Well, that gets us to number 5. So we are in the top 5 now. This is truly the cream of the crop. And this is a place where I didn't have to manipulate anything. I didn't have to tweak anything. Every game in here I feel 100% solid about. They are ones that are either new classics for me or are classic classics. They are games that thrill me repeatedly. So my number 5 is one, before I said something about a game that Adam loves and I was being sarcastic. This time I'm actually being serious when I say it. It's Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy, designed by Tuco Takokalio and published by Laudapelit.fi. I have no idea what that means, but that's who does it. This game is the most epic 4X experience. It takes a lot of time to sit down and play through a game of this. You gotta invest to play this game, but when you do, it is absolutely worth it. The production is to die for, especially if you have the deluxe version where all the individual sculpts of the ships are out there. That was the version that Adam brought to TimCon last year, and it was a delight to look at. I love the management of your ships, where you build up your ships over time with different kinds of weaponry, and each different kind of weapon gets its own kind of dice on the board. I think that is so cool. I love that it leaves a little bit of dice chucking in there, but it also lets you pick the right weapon so you can dramatically increase your chances by having the right weapons, even if you're just chucking dice to see whether you hit or not. That's a lot of fun. I like the exploration. You're going around, you're flipping over planets, you're trying to see if you get resources. And going back to production again, if you get resources, you're taking the resource off of your board, putting it out in the place where you just explored, and that opens up on your board, on your player board, the amount of production that you now have for whatever that resource is. So elegantly done, so beautiful, and the gameplay itself is top notch. It can be a little bit frustrating when you're getting your butt beat by everybody else. And that's my only complaint, is that the frustration level can be high if you're not doing well. But man, that's a risk I'm willing to take for a game that is this cool. That was my number 5, and that was Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy.
Eclipse Second Dawn was my number 31 on my list. It just fell outside of my top 30. I do rate it a 9 on Board Game Geek. It's an awesome game. I'll play anytime. I have been frustrated by it at times, but not because the mechanisms were problematic at all. It's just a little bit about the luck involved in this type of game, and it can be a little frustrating to me. But loved it. I want to play it again anytime you guys want to.
I'm gonna jump in here. My number 5 is also Eclipse Second Dawn. Chris, you nailed it with everything you just said right now. This game is so cool. Every time we talk about playing it, I get the jitters a little bit. I know that's gonna be this epic experience, and how am I gonna build up my ships this time? What kind of moves is Tim gonna get all these sectors, and we're gonna have to make some plan to take him down? Is my military gonna get too big? People are gonna come in and see that. We better take Adam out. Oh, so you get this. To me, it's an epic experience. You get to start with 2 little tiny ships, and you're going to go out, you're going to explore and build this galaxy. You build up your ships, you build your civilization. You go out and you might have some combat, and you can get defeated militarily, like you said, Chris, but I've been finding more and more strategies. Well, maybe I'll work on my tech and I can build more of these. I can get some more, I can go hide out. There's a few different routes that are out there. I think either way, I have a blast playing this game. I get excited when I think about playing it. Eclipse Second Dawn, that's also my number 5.
All right, my number 5 is The Castles of Burgundy, my favorite Stefan Feld game. This was originally published by Ravensburger, although Awaken Realms just finished a crowdfund campaign where they're doing a beautiful new production of this game. Even on the old ugly version, the original Ravensburger version, or even the 2019 20th anniversary edition that was produced, I've been harsh on the production on both of these, but I don't care. I will play this game anytime. It's a fantastic game for me. I just played it this weekend with my parents. We came into a tight, my dad and I, gets 238 points, his highest score ever, and I just beat him at 240 points. Tight game. For a game with so many different scoring opportunities, it's always fun to see it come down to that end. I love the simple action selection mechanism. You got 2 dice, you pick what tiles you want to put into your reserve or what tiles you want to put out on your board. When you complete sections, you get bonuses. When you place tiles, you get bonuses. There's bonuses everywhere. I always have fun playing this game. And the more I've played it, over 100 times at this point, the more I just love going back to it. It's gone from being novel to just being a tight competition. I play this a lot on Board Game Arena, but I've played it tons and tons of times in real life as well. So Castle of Burgundy, great game.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about Castle of Burgundy here. You love it tons and tons, Tim. I try to get into it. I try my best to get into it. And that's where I'll sit with Castles of Burgundy.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I maybe a little bit more enthusiastic than Adam. You and I played one game, Tim, and that's my only play of Castles of Burgundy. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was fine. There's a neat puzzle. You're right. The production is an absolute crime against humanity. So hopefully Awaken Realms will step in with their masterful artistry and fix that problem. And hey, maybe if we play that version, I'll get more enthusiastic about it. So decent game. Nah, not on my list, though.
Chris, there's even minis in that new version.
I know. That's why I might like it.
And this is where my number 5 would be. I already cheated again. It was Eclipse. Back to you, Chris.
All right. My number 4 is Nemesis by Adam Kopinski and published by Awaken Realms Games. This is another new addition to my list, and anybody who heard our review of this game knows exactly how I feel about this. This is an epic cinematic adventure that feels like a story to me. Every time I played this game, I feel like I'm in a movie. I love that. That is one of the things I like best about games. And one of the things that Nemesis does that is so wonderful, I think, is it takes that element of storytelling and turns it into a semi-competitive game. It's so hard to take a competitive game and really make it fully story-driven, and this game managed to do that by having the potential for a hidden traitor. And you don't have to. That's the other interesting thing. You can play it in full co-op mode, and so it's really up to the individual players. If you're feeling, sassy that night and want to be the guy who's trying to trick everybody else, then you can do that. And you can be the winner potentially and be the hidden traitor. Or you can do like we did when we played our second game, the one that Adam was involved in, and you can go full co-op and everybody is being honest with each other, and you end up winning or losing based on, your teamwork. Now, what's fun about it is that even in a situation where you're being fully co-op, you don't really know that you're being fully co-op. So that was one of the things I loved about that game we played, was that we were being fully co-op. We were all being honest and we were all kind of pulling for the same thing, but you never quite knew. Like, we thought Steve was being sketchy as hell. I thought you guys were being sketchy as hell, but Tim thought I was being sketchy as hell, so he made Adam go in, or Steve go and check the engines after I did, so you thought I was lying. But that actually, to me, says a lot about the game. It adds a fun element that you don't find in co-op games. Probably the only reason this game is not higher on my list is the fact that it is more co-op than I traditionally like. I love a game that you sit down and play competitively, and Nemesis is only semi-competitive. One of the things that I appreciate about this game is it also has the you can build out the game through expansions. I just actually got the Carnomorphs expansion, but it turned out to actually be the Il Carnomorphos expansion because I accidentally got the Italian version. So I'm gonna see if I can fix that by getting the actual English version, which I'll be able to understand. But it gives you another opportunity to play with a different kind of alien, which to me, that really extends playability. So for a game that's this story-driven, that changes the story, and I think that is going to make this game even more exciting. So I'm looking forward to getting to some more of those different scenarios, and looking forward to getting this one to the table, either with a group or as a solo game. And so Nemesis is my number 4 game, and I might even go up next year.
Chris, I think even the English rule book on that is going to be written like it's in a foreign language, so it might not be too much different for you. No, this is a great game, and I agree that the one thing that pushes over the top of a lot of these kind of like co-op, minis heavy story-based games is the fact that there's that hidden traitor element that makes it. There's so much tension, and I feel at risk the whole time I'm playing this game. So I've had a fun time with a couple plays of it, and happy to play it anytime.
You're right, Chris. You bring up a great point about that cooperative game we had going, cooperative with a paranoia underlying everything. Nobody could trust us completely, but at the end of the game, we all had noble goals. So that was just a fun play and a great point.
All right, so my number 4 game of all time is Everdell, designed by James A. Wilson, and it was published by Starling Games. I've talked about this game. We reviewed it a while back. I've had well over 100 plays of this. I was a play tester on some of the expansions, and I still love this game. It's a charming theme. It's a wonderful, wonderful production, and it's just still fun gameplay. It's kind of a nice mix of worker placement with a little bit of hand management. It's a tableau building. Fun mechanisms with a beautiful production makes this a game I keep wanting to go back to. I was a playtester on the next expansion that's coming out, which was I think it's called New Leaf, if I remember right. I think it's the New Leaf expansion. And it is so fun. I can't wait for all of you listeners who are Everdell fans to get a chance to play that expansion. It really changes the game up in a fun way. I love this game. I think I always will. A couple shout outs. One is that we did interview James Wilson about a year and a half ago or so, kind of early in our podcast. That was a really fun conversation. So if you're interested a little bit more about his design process, go back and listen to it. The other thing I want to call out is that, Starling Games, the publisher of this game, is an imprint of another publishing studio that's well known for poor treatment of their Kickstarter backers and some of their employees. And I want to just mention that my excitement about this game does in no way, I'm not endorsing the company that's behind it, but I am endorsing the designer. James seems to be a great person, and the game itself is fantastic. So Everdell, my number 4 game of all time.
Everdell comes in, nothing bad to say about it. It's just very neutral for me. I haven't gone back to it. I think if it was around and I had the time, I would be setting this one up when I wanted to just chill out. It seems so pleasant, the way you can build your little tableau, your little city, your little village there. It's just cool. I haven't played this one enough. I'd like to play some more.
I think I've played this game exactly once, and this was a long time ago. I think back when you first got your copy of it, Tim. And honestly, I don't remember a doggone thing about it, other than it seemed okay. And maybe it would seem better now, but I would like to try this one again. I know you hold it in really high regard, and I know that it's a well-regarded game generally. So I'd like to play it again, but I just don't remember much about it at this point.
Yeah, I would suspect, Chris, that when I introduced this to you, you were really not into Euros at all, like resource management at all. And so it probably wasn't a game that got you excited at that time, right? You were definitely more excited in things that were a little more thematic, a little more, action-based and stuff like that. With your change in, just how you think about games now, you probably would enjoy this more. And I would love to get this out with the 3 of us, the 4 of us at our next con. Maybe I'll bring my copy with, and I think you guys would probably all enjoy it if we're sitting down playing it together and fighting over our little fiefdoms in critters. So
let's do it.
Cool.
Coming in at my number 4, kind of surprising to me, actually. This is the Expanse board game. It's designed by Jeff Engelstein and published by WizKid Games. Despite the publishing, this game is fantastic. It has a nice card river. You're going to purchase a card. Do you want to use it for the operations points or not? If you use it for the operations points, you get to do some actions. If you use it for the event, oh my gosh, I'm saying this so bad. How do I explain this, guys?
If you buy it for the action points, then you get to do some basic actions worth those points. Or you can buy it for the event and then do what's written on the card.
There you go. And if you use it for the action points, then that event could go up to the other factions. You're not going to get to use it. So that event goes up, the other factions can bid for it. The system's so fun, it results in this area control, lots of interaction, asymmetric factions here. So kind of a light area control kind of thing. And this can be over in about, 90 minutes. So again, kind of an expansive, epic game, but it comes in at 90 minutes with a theme that I absolutely love. That's the Expanse board game. My number 4.
From our one play of it, I don't remember this game, or I don't have a strong enough impression of this game to weigh in a lot on the details, but I do remember really enjoying those multi-use cards that you were just talking about, having different ways you can interact with your cards. And I also love the theme of this game as well, having watched the television show. I'm not sure how to say this without saying spoilers, but one of the things that frustrated me about the game just a little bit from a theme standpoint was that there are certain things in the game that feel outdated in the story if you make it all the way through. So I can't really say it better than that without giving spoilers. But yeah, that actually bothered me just a little bit. It's very time specific. It's specific to a particular point in the series.
I had a great time with this game, and it was one of my favorite 4X experiences. I think because it was so streamlined, even though Chris kept trying to steal that proto-molecule and just blowing us both up the entire game. But I remember having a lot of fun with this. And I think Arks, I mentioned this when I talked about Arks a couple weeks ago, I think Arks might supersede this for me as a streamlined 4X game. Also, just because the production on it is such a problem. But also, I think I would like to go back to it because I have now since read most of the Expanse series, and I wasn't familiar with the IP at all when I read it, and now I want to go back, and I want to be the one in the last place at the beginning of a round so I can get the Rocinante and use one of those characters from it, and like all the characters in the different factions that are showing up in the card where we're going to make so much more sense to me. So this is a great design, terrible production. I think it's worth revisiting. So Adam, I'm surprised to see it this high for you, but I'm not surprised to see it on your list.
Tim, if I was going to get blown up with anybody by a proto-molecule, I'd want it to be you. All right, well, here we go, yo. We're up to number 3 on the list, and we are in no-brainer territory now. Number 3 for me was Blood Rage by Eric Lang and published by Simon Games. What can I say that I haven't already said 50 times on this show about Blood Rage? Production, incredible. Giant monsters, cool figures. The card play in this game. It's area control, but your combat is completely controlled by cards, where you're playing this cat and mouse game. You're trying to anticipate what the opponents are going to do. You have cards that can give you benefits if you lose the battle. You have cards that can make it so that your opponent's cards get discarded when they get played. It's this very exciting combat that it never fails to thrill me when I play this game. One thing that we haven't done a lot of is play with the expansions, and I think they make a world of difference. I think that's because on the platforms where we've played most of the time, primarily BGA, they don't have any of the expansions. But once you add those in with the additional monsters and some of the additional cards, it makes it even more fun. And the Gods expansion, the Gods of Asgard, I think same thing. So this is one, I don't know that I'm ever going to get bored of it. The more I play it, the more I like it. And I love that you guys like this game too, because it means I can get it played a lot more. So that's my number 3. That is Blood Rage.
Last year when we did our top 10 games of all time list, this was on Chris's list. I think it was on Adam's list as well. And I told you guys that it was my favorite area control game, but it fell all the way around number like 34 or 35 for me. This year, it's number 3. I'm right there with you, Chris. And in fact, I'm kind of wondering if we're going to end up with the same top 3 games. But Blood Rage is fantastic. I love it more the more I play it. I've gotten just a little bit more used to and enjoying area control games, a little less butthurt when things don't go my way in some of these high conflict games. And Blood Rage is just my favorite of them. It's always fun. I love the drafting. I love the big events that can happen. I love the big scoring that can happen in the final round. Super fun game. I'll play it anytime.
This game is so fun, you guys. I had it at number 16 on my list last episode. It does get better the more you play it, Chris. Just like you said, you realize more and more things you can do. Tim's doing this strategy this time. Maybe I'll try to steal a little bit of that strategy next game and counter what's going on. What a fun game, Blood Rage. My number 3 is Anachrony. Every time I play this game, it gets set up, I know it's going to be a brain burn. It's going to be sitting there thinking tons and tons. I get this tingle. I physically tingle at the back of my neck as my brain starts to cook a little bit. Tim, I have such a blast playing this game with you, setting up the pieces while you're sitting there thinking. You're playing with these beautiful components, these textured resource cubes. They all have a different texture for the different resource they represent. Just that little component itself is enough, but expand that across the entire game. This Awakened Realms production, designed by David Turksey, by the way. It just puts my brain in a calm place. Love playing this one. I think it's my favorite worker placement resource management game. That is Anachrony.
Hey, Adam, did you mean to say Awakened Realms production?
Oh, yeah. Nope, I got that wrong. This is a Mind Clash Games production. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Number 2. And now I really am curious to see how Tim and I match up on these last couple. My number 2 is Terraforming Mars by Jacob Frixelius, published by Frix Games and I believe Stronghold Games. This is one of my all-time favorites. It's number 2 of my all-time favorites, of course, since that's the list we're doing right now. And it's made ultimately better by the fact that there is the official big box that includes the upgraded components. This is a game that was always mechanically sound, mechanically brilliant, but was so ugly with these cardboard chits all over the place. And you just wanted to throw it against a wall. It's like, why are you so ugly? Such a great game that just does not look nice. And they fixed that with the big box. And now it's a beautiful game. But like I said, the mechanics were always there. I love the tableau building. I love the thematic basis of the game. That all of this stuff is kind of based on real science. We're not there yet, obviously, because we're not terraforming Mars, but all of it's based, at least loosely, in actual science. I believe Jacob Frixelius, the designer, is a physicist by training, if I'm remembering that correctly. But there's so much about this game to love. Interestingly, I haven't played this game in a while. It's one that my wife and I really dug into and were playing constantly for a while. But then I kind of convinced her to start playing some other games with me, and so we started branching out. And so it's actually been probably several months since I played Terraforming Mars, and bringing it up on this list kind of made me go, oh yeah, I want to get back to this, because now it's been long enough that this game feels fresh again to me. Like, the idea of taking that thing out of the box is really exciting. And it was always kind of exciting because just the game itself is so good. And so now it actually feels almost like I'll be pulling something new out. So I'm actually thrilled to get this one back on the table. That's my number 2 game, Terraforming Mars.
Well, I mentioned this last week at number 12, high on my list, could have made my top 10 easily. So we're not going to match up on the top 3. I forgot that you did already mention something else on my list, Chris. But great game, great game, and I love it.
One of the things you mentioned, Chris, that it's all based in like near science or hard science. I think that's one of the things that keeps me wanting to come back to check out all these cards, see how we're doing. Oh, space elevator? Nope, not there yet. In one of these days, maybe we'll be, oh, yeah, we got this one. Look at this. This used to be not real. So that's what a great game. Great theme. I'm glad you brought that up. Go ahead, Tim.
One fun fact, since you mentioned the space elevator, I played this with a guy that works at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, basically, NASA's primary research facility. He was one of the engineers that worked on some of the components of one of the recent Mars rover missions. And he does some really interesting stuff, but I really wanted to play this game with him to see what he thought about the science. And he had a great time with it. And it was really fun to hear him talking about some of these potential projects and things. But he mentioned the space elevator specifically, and that it's probably too cost ineffective, not because of the construction or the engineering, but because it'd be too easy to be targeted by terrorists. So the security around a space elevator was so high that that probably was cost prohibitive to ever put it in place. And
Wow.
So our planet can't get things together enough to build something that would help the entire planet if we did get together.
Exactly. Well, this is one of many areas that I think you could say that about. Well, my number 2, which I think I am going to hear again on somebody else's list here, is Tapestry, designed by Jamie Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games. Tapestry rose for me since last year. I've always loved this game. Since the first time I played it, I've had a great time playing this game, and it's continued to get better and better. But I would say that probably what's pushing even higher for me and is going to keep it on my list, maybe indefinitely, is the almost infinite variability with the 2 expansions added. There's a couple new modules that change up the game slightly, but not drastically. They don't make the game longer. They don't make it too much harder to teach or anything like that, but they had a lot of fun. But beyond that, there's just so much variety. And now the capital city mats, the tapestry cards, the technology cards, there's just so much to explore and do in this game. Now, this is probably going to be a little bit of a controversial pick because I think there are a lot of board game critics who weren't too excited about this game. But the primary reason that I've ever heard about it was talk about balance, and that you could get a faction that is drastically stronger than another faction. Stonemeier's done a lot to try to mitigate that over time. They started collecting data on their website for plays since they first put this together. Stonemaier actually hired a data analyst that works for them part-time, at least, maybe full-time now, kind of analyzing this data and deciding where there's weaknesses or strengths in their asymmetric types of games. And they've shown that by basically providing updates to some of the factions so that as you play, you can look up the official updates on these factions and then play with those, which are supposed to help balance them a little bit more. But to all of that, I say, well, that's great. And at some point, Stonemaier said that when they do their final expansion, they'll actually print new versions of these so that you can put them in your box. That's all great, but you know what? Who cares? Sometimes fun overrules balance. And I will sit down to this game anytime. You can take the strongest faction in that game, and I'll take the weakest, and I will still have a fun time playing it and trying to best you because of me optimizing what I do with each of the moves, with each tapestry card I draw, with each technology that's available. Games can be fun even if they're not extremely balanced, and that's the case for me with Tapestry. All that being said, I mean, it's just a fun play for me. I've played this game, I think, 75 times. Playing it a lot on Board Game Arena. I wish the expansions were there. If they ever add those, that's definitely going to make that even more fun. But it's like, I play a lot of games on Board Game Arena. A lot of people invite me to async games. And there are games where I get to them and I'm like, okay, it's my turn. I'll take it. And then there are games that it's like, oh, I'm so excited. My turn came up here. I can't wait to play it. Tapestry is like that for me every time. If Tapestry is the one where I see it flashing that it's my time to take a turn, I can't wait to sit there and look at the board state and decide which track I want to move up. I just love this game. It's so much fun for me.
Wow, Tim, what you say there about the turns, I kind of, right now, I'm like the guy that's like, it's my turn in Tapestry. Here we go. This is going to be a doozy. I'm going to be so inefficient and I'm not going to do the right thing. And I don't want to spend the time to look around for mushroom turns into a big guy, turns into a red star. I'm not there yet. There's a lot going on in this game. I feel like if I could wrap my head all around it, I might get there. You guys are both have like 80, 90 plays. I think I've had 6, 7 plays for this game. So I think that's part of it too. I see you guys do so well, and you go to space and you're like in a different galaxy by the whole end of the game. And I'm like, what? I just got a dinky farm over here. What the heck? I want to go to space. How do I get there? So I'm always a bit envious of how well you guys crush me at this game. And my head's just not wrapped around it yet. Tapestry.
I want to mention one more thing here since I mentioned the balance and the factions. If you have a concern about that still, take out 3 factions for the base game and just don't play with them. Take out the Futurists, take out the Chosen Ones, and take out the Traitors. And the rest of the factions are almost perfectly balanced. They're all fun to play. And if you just do that, the game is great if that's a concern for you.
All right. My number 2 is one that has been talked about. This is Dune Imperium by Dire Wolf Games and Paul Denon. A cool worker placement hand management. I just said the last game was my favorite worker placement hand management. I lied. It's Dune Imperium. It's this one. I love the theme. Chris nailed it. Everything he talked about. Now, the question that Tim asked Chris, I thought was really interesting. With or without the expansion? I think for now, for me, I still like the base game better. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to expand my brain out to all this other stuff that the expansion brings. There's a lot of it. I still like that slim, sleek game without that extra stuff for some reason. I think someday I will get to the point where I want to add the expansion and branch out and do that. But to me, there's something still unexplored to me about the slender, streamlined base game version of this game.
And I guess that brings us to number 1. I feel like I need to pause here for a second and just look back over what we've been doing these last few weeks. I mean, my goodness, this has been a month we've devoted almost to this process of going through our top 30 games, and that's pretty epic. And it was interesting for me going back and really thinking about how I feel about these games and which ones have staying power and which ones have me excited right now. Just all of that. It was a super interesting exercise for me, and I can't wait to hear when we start getting our lists of favorite games from listeners, when I start seeing those. That's going to be a really interesting thing as well. I'm dying to hear how our lists compare. But that brings me back to number 1, and Tim was absolutely right. My number 1 is going to be Tapestry by Jamie Stegmaier, published by Stonemaier Games. And, Tim said so much of it, but I feel like this is my number 1, so I can't just say, well, Tim said it all. I have to say something. So no, he's right. I mean, that there's so much here. It's civilization building light. It doesn't feel like Through the Ages where it's like, okay, buckle yourselves in. This is going to be big. This is a pretty breezy game. But the depth of decision making, I feel like, even though you're always picking those same 4 tracks, the depth of decision making grows as you learn it. At first, it's kind of about, these sort of the big picture items. Then when you start getting better and you start playing against players who are also better like you are, it really gets down to optimizing, like so many good games. And when you're able to optimize and squeeze every last point out of that move, then it just feels so good. And there's nothing to me that feels as exciting in gaming as those big moves like I'm going to space, or I love when you roll the science dice and you get to actually move up the track for free and take the benefit of it. Those things feel so good. Or build multiple technologies, or put one of those gigantic pieces out on your player mat so that you're covering up a segment and getting a free resource and just all this stuff. There's so many big moments in that game that I absolutely love. Now, I do also understand the criticism that I have heard of, it is the same 4 tracks. You keep doing it all over and over again. And there is some truth to that. There occasionally playing with the base game to me does start to feel a little bit the same. Doesn't make me stop wanting to play it, but it does feel a little bit more the same. But Tim is absolutely right. Once you add in the expansions to this game, it just opens up a whole new world, both in terms of the new cards, in terms of the new technology track. It's an entirely new game. So I think I'll be playing this one for a long time. For all I know, this one may be showing up at number 1 on my list next year. I probably need to switch it up so it doesn't get boring. I don't want the listeners to get bored like, oh yeah, Chris is going to do Tapestry again. But I just absolutely love this game. It deserves to be my number 1.
Well said, Chris. Well said. All right, so my number 1, can you guys guess?
Ark Nova? Did you say Ark Nova already?
Yeah, I no, it's Dune Imperium. Dune Imperium by Paul Denon, published by Direwolf Games. Um, I kind of expected this to show up as Adam's number one, and I can't picture now what his number one is. I'm sure I won't be surprised when I hear it. Yeah, I love Dune Imperium. I think this is a game where the expansion, the Rise of X expansion, actually did push it higher for me. I think it still would be in my top 10, but probably towards the bottom of it. But since playing with the Rise of X expansion, and I've probably played it a dozen times, not only did it just expand the variability in the game, the Imperium row is always unique. There's so much fresh variety in those cards and what you can do with them. The new worker placement spots are a ton of fun. I always loved this game because there were so many unique spots to go to, and the expansion blows that up a little bit, as well as adding a couple other mechanisms. But beyond that, the expansion to me fixed the solo mode. It actually made the solo mode fun, more competitive to me. And so now I'm even enjoying playing this game solo, which was never top of my list. But multiplayer games of this, 3 or 4 players, I think 3 is my favorite player count. But sitting down and just like fighting for those really tough points, and having those big surprise combats, and the tight worker placement, and the fun of deck building and trying to optimize your hand, everything about this game is it's so much fun to me. I don't think I've ever had a bad play of it. I've always had fun. I've always enjoyed what I was doing in this game. Dune Imperium is my number one.
Tim, I was wondering why you were so quiet a couple seconds ago. I was like, why isn't Tim talking about Dune Imperium? I think he likes this game. So I'm glad to hear you talk about it. The things you brought up are just all fantastic. Yeah, the expansion, I think I'm ready for it in a few more plays, 5 to 10 more plays. I want to put it in there and then go all in. But I don't want to say goodbye yet to that base game.
And really interesting that another game that all three of us had in our top 10. I think that's pretty cool. And thank goodness for that expansion. Just wanted to say that. Expansion.
Ha.
Expansion.
Okay. So for those who aren't actually seeing us, I said that and I get these like stone face like, what?
I couldn't tell if that was Chris's upstate New York accent that was just coming in there, or if it was actually a joke.
All right.
Oh.
Oof. All right. My number one game of all time is PAX Pamir 2nd Edition. This is by Cole Worley and Whirligig Games. This is not just area control, but 2 area controls in one. You got the map of what's kind of modern day Afghanistan, and then you've got all these tableaus. Each player has a tableau in front of them too, and you can move around the tableau players too. That's the other area. So I think that's just amazing. This game also has a personal thematic connection for me. I spent, 2 years of my life flying circles over Afghanistan, looking down, seeing all the villages, seeing all the people, all the cities down there, the Kajaki Dam, just amazing things I never thought I'd see. So learning just a small piece in time about the history there, what's been going on in a land that's been so ravaged for so long, and then loved at different periods in time too. So it's just an interesting place. The theme is great. The art and production here are fantastic as well. All of these things come together to make PAX Pamir my number one game of all time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I knew you liked this game, Adam. I guess I should have been suspicious it didn't show up earlier. I am surprised this is your number one. I don't think it was even on your top 10 last year. Or maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't your top 10 last year. But yeah, very cool game. I'd like to play this one physically at some point. We played on Tabletop Simulator a few times, and I think it's a really cool experience, but I think I'd like it even more in person.
I did not see this one coming, honestly. And maybe that's because I don't think about this game a lot because I've never played it. I haven't played it with you guys like on Tabletop Simulator. I'd love to, especially now that I know it's on Adam's list, because Adam's got pretty good tasting games.
Adam, do you think this rose at all for you because of our recent experience with Arks and Cole Worley's design there, and it got it back at the top of your mind?
Yeah, I think I haven't gotten it to the table lately. I was thinking, like Chris said, with Terraforming Mars, sometimes there's these lulls where it goes in the box for a while, then you want to get it back out. So this one has been kind of in one of my lulls. I just haven't got it played, and the solo mode is so great too. You can just put this out there and run through it solo a few times. So both solo and multiplayer, and then I haven't played it in a while, I think are all coming together and put this game at number one.
Very cool. All right, well, listeners, that will wrap up our top 10 games and overall our top 30 games of all times. If you didn't listen to the first 2 episodes in this series, go back and check them out. Lots of fun games discussed on there. Next week, we're going to be covering our listeners' top 10 games. So we put up a poll, and we're collecting our listeners who wanted to post to that their top 3 favorite games. We're going to take all those games, compile them, see what games came up the most and talk about their top 10. So we're going to review it in a list just like this, 10 through 1, and kind of talk about our input. We're really excited to see how they match up with us. And we're going to kind of rate to see which one of us compares to our listeners the closest. So I'm really excited to see that. Sounds like a lot of fun. We may also have a couple surprise guests on the next episode. So listen in next week. After that, we'll be back to our more traditional format of doing a hot take review where we play a game and immediately discuss it and give you our input on it. And every fourth episode, like we traditionally have, we'll be back to these special episodes where we do top 10 lists and special topics and things like that. This was a blast. We'll probably do it again next year. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye, all.
Bye-bye.